I had opened my mouth to ask if that was where the Englishwoman's body had been found, but as I followed his gesture, I realized that we were almost at the Taverna. Everything was forgotten in a surge of excitement. Abandoning Nikos, I ran forwards to the stone arch that fronted the Taverna and ducked under a billowing bougainvillea vine. The arch merged with a low wall that surrounded a terrace with a spectacular view of the sea, but I barely gave it a glance as I hurried up the steps to the front door. "Roxy!" I shouted. "Roxy, it's me!" I stepped through the doorway and found myself in a cavernous room with roughly plastered whitewashed walls and huge wooden beams spanning the ceiling. There was a large domed fireplace in one corner, now dark and empty, but with soot marks on the surrounding walls that suggested a roaring presence in cooler times. A wooden counter stood at the opposite end of the room, haphazardly stacked with terracotta bowls and dishes, bottles of olive oil, jars of toothpicks, a pyramid of glossy lemons, and piles of curling paper, all jostling for position next to an ancient cash register and a sleek espresso machine. Behind the counter ran a long shelf filled with a motley assortment of wine and liquor bottles, and flanked by black and white photos of old men in Cretan costume, each more wizened than the last. The rest of the room was filled with wooden chairs and tables, their bent forms peeking out from beneath blue and white checkered tablecloths. The whole place was cluttered, chaotic, and utterly charming. It was also empty, and I paused for a moment, frowning. It was late afternoon, well before the dinner hour, but still, I had expected some activity in the Taverna. Then the sound of footsteps made me turn eagerly, and I sprang forwards in delight as an auburn-haired woman stepped through the doorway behind the counter. "Roxy!" She stared at me, her mouth slack with shock. "Daphne! What are you doing here?" I laughed, moving towards her, arms outstretched. "I came to see you, of course. Why didn't you tell me you were coming?" "I wanted to surprise you." "Surprise?" snapped Roxy. "What the hell were you thinking? Who says I want to be surprised?" I faltered, my arms dropping back to my sides. I looked at her in shocked bewilderment. "You did. The last time we had dinner together, you said you were expecting me. You told me to surprise you." Roxy made an impatient sound. "You're such a workaholic. I never thought you'd actually—" She broke off. I stared at her. What was wrong? Why was Roxy acting like this? "I'm sorry," I said, swallowing. "I just really missed you, and I thought, since you said, come any time—" Roxy blinked rapidly. Yes, of course, you're welcome any time." She took a deep breath. "Sorry, Daph, I didn't mean. It's great to see you. I wish you gave me some notice, that's all." She hesitated, then reached out and pulled me into her arms. I hugged her close, burying my face in her mass of curly hair, inhaling the familiar scent of her favourite aloe shampoo. It took me vividly back to that day at university when I had been called to the porter's lodge to find a policeman waiting for me. I'd stood, numb and silent, as he gently informed me that a lorry had lost control on the M4 and ploughed across the carriageway, straight into my parents' car. They had both been killed instantly. Roxy had been waiting for me when I returned to my room, and she had pulled me into her arms without a word. Afterwards, in the long grey weeks that had followed, Roxy had been my lifeline, taking over all the funeral arrangements, coaxing me out into the fresh air, bringing favourite foods to tempt my appetite, and forcing me out of bed when I would have lain quiet and listless. Now I pulled back and smiled at her. I started to say something but was interrupted by a clattering on the front steps, and a moment later Nikos entered the Taverna dragging my case behind him. Kalispera, said Nikos, beaming at us as we broke apart. It's a great day for you, Roxy, eh? Your friend come from England. He set my case down by the counter, then glanced at the chalkboard behind it and added, You can write Seabream for the specials tomorrow. My father wants to go to the waters near Paximalia. There's good fishing there. Roxy rubbed her temples. Actually, Nikos, I think I'm going to have to cancel tomorrow's order. I still have most of the catch you brought yesterday, and, well, nobody's eating it. He nodded and backed towards the door. No problem. I will take you to the resort in Ayusiorios. He paused in the doorway and winked at me. I see you in the village tomorrow, Daphne. Remember, free kaiki tour anytime you like. A moment later, he was gone. I turned back to find Roxy eyeing my case like it was a snake that had slithered into the taverna. Are you planning to stay here? She asked sharply. You can't. I stared at her, at a loss for words. After all her messages touting a bed here waiting any time, it had seemed a given that I would stay at the taverna. Finally, I said in a small voice, I thought, but it's okay, I can find accommodation somewhere else. Maybe something in the next village, or I suppose I could go back to Placas. Don't be stupid. Roxy made a noise of frustration. Of course you have to stay here, she said savagely. She shut her eyes for a moment, took a deep breath, then let it out again, and gave me a wan smile. Oh, sorry, Daph. I didn't mean to sound... Of course I want you to stay here. It's just you took me by surprise, and I'm fully booked. Fully booked? I echoed, unable to stop my eyes flicking sideways around the empty taverna. She flushed. I mean, sort of. It's not... There are only 2 rooms, you see, and one is already taken. I've got someone staying here for a few weeks. And the only other room is in the extension. It isn't quite finished yet. The extension was mostly used for storage before, so it's in a pretty rough state. She gave me a sideways look. It's nothing like the 5-star hotels that you're used to now. Oh, God, is that what you're worried about? I laughed with relief. I don't mind. Come on, I've crashed on your sofa often enough. All I need is somewhere to sleep and somewhere to wash, and I'll be perfectly happy. I don't know. That was before you became a celebrity designer earning silly money. You're a spoilt princess now, Daphne. You can't cope without your swanky luxuries. I glanced quickly at Roxy. She'd said it with a joking tone, but I couldn't help feeling slightly uncomfortable at the words. That's not true, I said. I mean, okay, I have mostly stayed in big hotels recently, but it's not like I can't. I mean, I don't need... It'll be really nice to stay somewhere rustic and authentic for a change. Roxy gave me a wry look and said with a grin, Well, if it's rustic authenticity you want, you'll be getting it here by the bucket loads. I laughed, happy to find her mood restored. Oh, and I'm paying for the room, I added. I'm not expecting a freebie or anything. Don't be silly. Of course you're not going to pay. No, I want to, I insisted. I want to be treated just like any other customer. I want to support your new business and Daphne... Roxy gave me a mock severe look. Just shut up, okay? Okay, I said meekly, trying not to laugh. It felt just like old times again, and I was seized by a surge of affection for my best friend. Oh, Roxy, it's so good to see you, I cried, pulling her into another hug. It's been ages since we sat down and had a good natter together. I want to hear everything that you've been up to. I want to hear how you found the Taverna and what you're planning to do. Yes, well, we can catch up over dinner tonight, said Roxy, extricating herself. Listen, if you're staying, I'm going to need to make a copy of your passport. She made a face at me. Greek tourism law makes you keep records of every bloody guest's identity documents, and it's easier to use old-fashioned photocopies. The internet can be a bit dodgy out here. She grabbed the handle of my case. "Look, why don't you leave your luggage with me and go and have a wander around the village? There's a really pretty walk by the marina, and I'll get your room ready." "Oh, I'll help you with the room," I said eagerly. "Just tell me what you need." "No." I stepped back, staring at Roxy in surprise. She swallowed and gave me a tight smile. "You said you wanted to be treated like a normal guest, remember? Well, I don't want you to see the room until it's perfect, okay?" I nodded and allowed myself to be ushered out of the taverna. But as I walked slowly down the street, I tried to marshal my confused thoughts. Was I imagining it, or was there something off about Roxy? Surely she wasn't normally so touchy, so snappy. And she'd always loved surprises, even the time I'd arranged a surprise party at her flat. She had opened the door in nothing but a wet towel and a green face mask, and she'd simply laughed it off and rushed to get drinks for everyone. And yet today, I thought back to the look on Roxy's face when she had first walked in and seen me. She had seemed so dismayed, even horrified. "No, don't be ridiculous," I admonished myself. Why on earth would my best friend have been horrified to see me? She had just been overwhelmed and flustered and had lost her composure, that was all. And maybe I was partly to blame. I'd been so excited to see her, so keen to have a romantic storybook reunion that I hadn't considered things from her perspective. I thought back to the taverna. Now that I wasn't caught up in the emotion of the moment, I remembered little details I had ignored. The worn front steps and weeds growing in thick clumps around the edges of the terrace. The patchy, unfinished corner of the whitewashed walls where a bucket and paintbrush had been hastily abandoned. The bare light bulbs hanging from exposed wires in the ceiling. The old crockery and misshapen chairs and tables. Oh, it was still picturesque and charming in the extreme. Nothing could detract from the simple, rustic beauty of the taverna and its setting. But it was nothing like the postcard-perfect glimpses that Roxy had shared on social media. She must have been embarrassed to have someone burst in on her and tear down that carefully constructed fantasy. No wonder she had reacted so badly. And yet I still couldn't shake off the feeling that it was more than that, more than just wounded pride.